World Development System. Chapter 51. For reasons of precaution, you won't be able to see the precise designs of these blueprints, but a prototype will be made for a demonstration for all the people in this room and see for themselves later on. Of all the suggestions, we will implement Jay's plan and buy more slaves, whether it is for labor or for forming an army. Many here were unfamiliar with the term army. John smiled a bit and said to Tornwall, "Tornwall, what do you think of these blueprints? Can these be made with current materials available?" Tornwall was very astonished after watching the blueprints of crossbow, ballista and catapult. He never thought that a lever could be used in such a unique way in the form of catapults. He was even more surprised by the ballista, however he didn't have time to be surprised, and after checking out for a while he gave his honest opinion. "I think these machines of war can be made from the forge provided by you, and I am pretty certain that these weapons will change the landscape on how future wars would be strategized." Tornwall emphasized on these heavy words and said with a very serious tone to everyone present in the hall. Everyone in the room was surprised by Tornwall's use of these heavy words and his reaction. However, from his reaction, they also understood the importance of these weapons and the importance of this matter. This also reaffirmed their thoughts that these weapons would be very useful in the future, whether it was against the magic beasts or against other nobles. Vlad was very surprised after hearing these words about those new weapons from Tornwall, and he had quite a different reaction compared to others. He was very serious when heard it from him. He already knew about Tornwall's past, but Tornwall's past was like a hornet's nest, and that's why he never revealed it to anyone and poked on it unless it was required. As expected, he had a plan regarding the invasion of beasts, so it seems he wasn't as naive as I thought. However, he should still have kept these weapons a secret, or maybe he is baiting others in this room. Vlad smiled and made some conclusions. Anyways, if he is that cunning, then he sure is worthy enough to become my disciple. Vlad smiled happily and made some notes and thoughts on John at this meeting. From this encounter, everyone in this room also understood that Tornwall would be one of the main men of John and chief leading engineer of North Frontier Town. Tornwall also understood that John trusted him enough after their previous encounter on his loyalty, and it seemed that John was moved enough to trust him after observing his resolve. This was a very modern crossbow which was made by combining the knowledge of both the worlds of Earth and Sarah's world. Meanwhile, the catapult could be started for production already, however it would not be accurate, but it would still be very effective. Okay, so it is decided that Tornwall will be in charge of the industrial base of the town. You will report directly to me. Every day the warriors will be trained by Jay in archery, while Josephine and Alan from Marquis Ray's Night Order would be responsible for training them in melee combat. I have already prepared for their training techniques and herbs required for the men. You guys only need to train them in combat, and it would be better if you guys can also master the training techniques. We will end this meeting for now and plan for other things from tomorrow." Everyone later headed out and started preparing for the future events of the town. Later on, Taylor was given the position of head butler of the mansion, while Martha was the head chef of the mansion. They and all the slaves were allowed to keep their children near them from now on. Next day, John visited Grandma Melanie as always. Today she had a surprise for John as she formally introduced Vlad to John. "John, let me introduce you to one of my past colleagues. You might already know him since you have met him earlier at Pearl City. He is one of my acquaintances from my past, and as your master who expects you to be strong and safe in the future, I have previously decided that you will be training under him to improve all the aspects of your combat. You might not know him, but few people can defeat him in hand-to-hand combat in this world. If someday you are able to defeat him, then that would be the most glorifying day for your master." Melanie laughed and joked as she said to John in the pharmacy hall. Meanwhile, both John and Vlad didn't take it as a joke. John had the confidence in him to defeat Vlad in future, as he knew he could use the AI to improve himself and his techniques, while simulation would improve him every second in combat, while Vlad's instincts rejected this idea as joke and believed John could certainly him in near future, but he still took it as a compliment from Melanie. However, Melanie still stressed this as the main point while having a conversation with them. "Of course your first priority would still be to learn under me and become the greatest Podiwunner of all time in Arkan, so you still can't slack off on herbology and learn about Podiwunnering from me. From tomorrow on, some of your time will be allocated on combat training with Vlad, and then, later on, you can play Baron in the town. I don't have any problems with it, since I would anyway get to learn more techniques and improve my techniques as well from a guy who is a veteran when it comes to combat and covert operations. However, after this time John paused for a bit, added a suggestion after thinking for a while. I would like one person from the group of slaves to train with me. Is that okay with you guys? Melanie meanwhile had a thoughtful expression on her face as she wondered who was the guy that happened to get John's attention out of all the slaves. Vlad already had an idea who the guy was, but since that guy was John's slave he didn't bother, as it would be rude to John. Slaves here in Arkan were treated as livestock, and therefore people remained cautious when dealing with slaves of other people. Who is the person that has caught your attention? I would like to meet him first before we decide. Melanie asked and said to John. Well, I already have an idea on who that person is, as I already met all the slaves before John and Co arrived at North Frontier Town, so I don't think there would be any problem if we have one more person in the training. Since he thinks he can become his asset, we might as well try it. However, I will not be responsible for your injuries while we are training, Vlad said to them in a serious manner. Vlad then looked in the direction of Melanie in a meaningful manner and said to her, it will be your responsibility to provide medicine baths and pastes for both of them. The only thing I can provide is training and share some of my experiences. I have gone through the same training and so will John, so we can't go in a roundabout way for this training. Anyway, let's look at the guy since you are so interested in him. Well, that guy's name is Jake. He seems most worthy for the future among all the slaves when it comes for combat. Additionally, he is young enough who can be trained for the future. As aspects, it was Jake which Vlad already knew about, since only Tornwall and Jake stood out among all the slaves. However, Jake had eyes of a wolf, showing emotions full of determination and revenge deep inside them, and hence Vlad's conclusion on Jake. As the conversation concluded between them, all of them first headed to John's mansion and looked for Jake. Chapter 52. Vlad then looked in the direction of Melanie in a meaningful manner and said to her, it will be your responsibility to provide medicine baths and pastes for both of them. The only thing I can provide is training and share some of my experiences. I have gone through the same training and so will John, so we can't go in a roundabout way for this training. Anyway, let's look at the guy since you are so interested in him. Well, that guy's name is Jake. He seems most worthy for the future among all the slaves when it comes for combat. Additionally, he is young enough who can be trained for the future. As aspects, it was Jake which Vlad already knew about, since only Tornwall and Jake stood out among all the slaves. However, Jake had eyes of a wolf, showing emotions full of determination and revenge deep inside them, and hence Vlad's conclusion on Jake. As the conversation concluded between them, all of them first headed to John's mansion and looked for Jake. Today in one of the markets of North Frontier Town there was a man who wore a hat that had a long feather behind it. This man looked very different from other people. He wore a yellow sand-colored long coat, he wore a dark brown-colored shirt within it, below he wore long trousers of light brown color. He had a bow tie on his shirt and a brooch pinned on his coat. He had a bag on his back and carried a portrait on his hand with a feather brush on his other hand. He had long ears compared to other people and golden hair. He had an average height and he showed an extraordinary demeanor. He was basically a half-elf and half-human. He was also the guy who sold the portrait of John's mansion to one of Vlad's men. During his visit to North Frontier Town, he was quite fascinated by the changes that were occurring over here. His name was Refone Zinfiel. He had studied at the Imperial City and came from there to rediscover about himself and more about the world. During his visit, he noticed that the volume of traders and people coming to this town had increased recently, and the center to this attention was the newly appointed honorary baron who bought this fief from Baron Mendez only recently, as this was the talk of the town. Today, after a long time, he had decided to visit John as he already came back. He had long wanted to meet John because of his interest in John's mansion and its architecture. Recently he also visited Paul the woodworker from this town, and he was quite shocked by the workings of his shop, as they were the ones who recently made the newly designed items of furniture around the North Frontier City, and recently even a lot of nobles ordered them to try it. Because of the increasing popularity recently, a lot of rich people ordered their furniture from Paul, and this has also resulted in many people imitating their designs. Refone inquired about these designs directly from Paul, and later he got to know from them that these designs were personally made by John. They were made because John wanted these types of furniture to be made in his mansion when he built his mansion, and hence this was how they got these designs. He also clarified that they already got permission from John when they started selling this furniture in their shop. This small creation of John actually helped the village a lot, because he created employment opportunities for the villagers in the town indirectly. It was because Paul nowadays required more men as he was in short of labor to fulfill all the orders taken. This month alone, he took more orders from merchants and nobles when he usually didn't get this much work in a full year. Many merchants were even ordering furniture from him so that they could resell it in other cities as works made by original creators. This one small detail made Refone understand that Baron John was changing North Frontier Town with small steps, but they were having large effects as it accumulated more and more. Meanwhile, at the other end, Melanie, Vlad, and John arrived at the mansion. Taylor, as the head butler of the mansion, invited them. Taylor had started organizing all the work of the mansion after he got appointed as the head butler of mansion. At first, he didn't understand the importance of this position. But slowly he will realize the importance of this role. As always, Taylor greeted John and other guests inside the mansion. Melanie remarked after watching the mansion, "John, you have made quite a good mansion. I only heard it from Sam and Eva, but it seems that the rumors were really true that your mansion was quite different from normal mansions and palaces." Ahem ahem. Vlad coughed a bit to indicate that they should get straight to the main point. John understood and asked Taylor to bring in Jake. Taylor was quite confused, but he still brought Jake to the room they were staying. Recently Jake was training with Alan and Josephine in the courtyard. "You can stay, Taylor." As Taylor was leaving, John indicated that he stay and listen to the current conversation that was going to take place. "This is the guy who I am going to take in to train for future. What do you think, Master?" John asked Melanie in a serious tone. Melanie saw Jake and commented after watching him for a while to everyone present in the hall, "Well, he seems like a determined boy. I guess I can understand the reason why both of you were interested in training him. It will be interesting to see how he grows along with you." Melanie then saw Jake and said to him, "Boy, you are too young to have those eyes. Learn to hide your emotions if you want to achieve your goals. You still have pure eyes and are trying acting like a man. See that old man on the side? You can never understand what he is thinking even when you know him for years, as many times he would do things differently from the norm. He could kill you with a smiling face and you wouldn't even know who killed you if you are not alert. That man has buried a lot of secrets. Learn to hide your emotions like him. Okay, let's get to business. I think it is okay to train him. I won't have problems using resources on him as well. Well, anyway, it would his decision if he wants to get stronger." Melanie sighed and then signaled to John. John then asked Jake and Taylor of their whole proposal since they saw him previously. "Jake, what do you think about training with us? It will fully be your choice. We have two proposals for you, which are either you can join us in helping our business since you have experience in business with your father, or you can train with Vlad for special training." Chapter 53. This training would be very different from the ones you usually do with other warriors, and it can also be life-threatening, so I hope you discuss with your father and give me an answer. Taylor sighed as he heard their conversation, and he too knew what Jake would choose in the end and gave his opinion. "I think we should let Jake decide what he wants to choose for his future." Taylor looked at Jake meaningfully and said to him, "Go on, we are quite lucky this time that Baron John bought us, so you should be grateful to him for the opportunity given to us in the future. Maybe it is fate that we are here today. I think all of us here already know what you are going to choose, as you already hate the weakness you experienced in the past, and it is also because you still show your emotions from your eyes that they understand you. However, my only advice to you would be that never let your rage consume you and learn to control your emotions." Part of the reason why Taylor let him walk his own road was that he too understood that he was too weak to protect his family, and understood that even if he rejected Jake, he would still train and risk his life to gain strength by other means. Jake was surprised as he thought that his father would rather want him to help John in business operations and think about improving his status and then maybe think about revenge. Jake thanked his father without saying anything, but both of them could understand how they felt right now. When Jake heard from John that he can become stronger with special training, he had already disregarded any pains which would follow him in training because he knew that if he wanted to gain something then he had to sacrifice something to gain it. His past experience had already taught him that weakness was sin and justice can only be achieved if you have enough strength. After John's proposal, Jake already reaffirmed John's position in his mind as he understood that John didn't want him to do his bidding but rather have his own free will and gave him two choices where he could decide where he wanted to take his path. Jake bent his left knee, put his right palm on the left side of his chest saluting and said to John in front of everyone, "Lord, I have already decided that I would like to serve you in this life and I hope to do your bidding in your absence where my presence is required. I hope to train under the tutelage of everyone present here as it would improve me with least risks and it would be better to train under your leadership rather than finding my own answers at the starting stage." This was one of the signs where one made an oath to a person in Arkan whether he was a lord or not. Both Melanie and John were quite surprised by Jake's decision to make an oath to serve John as this required a lot of determination. John was surprised because it was the first for John to experience this current situation. Melanie thought as she saw the scene folding before her eyes, it seems he made a correct decision to train this guy. He surely has a way to attract people towards him. People don't lack talented people working for them, but they surely lack loyal people working for them. This was what Melanie thought on the current situation. Meanwhile, Vlad already understood what would happen after his previous encounter with slaves and only smiled in an all-knowing way as if it was saying he knew what was going to happen sooner or later. Taylor expected his son to take this oath sooner or later as he understood Jake's mentality. He reciprocated good with good and bad with bad. "You don't need to call me Lord. You can call me John like all my friends and people. This is my first time having someone give an oath to me, however I would not reject your intentions. Since you have decided to serve me, I would like to gift you my most precious technique which isn't available to others and it was only recently improved by me. I think this would suit you more." It was the improved version of the Six Senses body refining technique which John had already improved many times over after he bought the improved versions of the technique and combined with his simulation system. "Vlad, do you think Miss Diana and Duke Blucia be interested in having our weapons in exchange for something else?" To be honest, Vlad was very much interested in those weapons, but he didn't ask about them as he wanted to wait for a perfect opportunity to do a deal with them. Vlad answered him in a serious tone, "I am very surprised that you are proposing to sell your weapons to us so early. What do you need in exchange for those weapons? If it is money, then that won't be a problem for us. Well, how about a deal where you guys help us protect our industries and train our men from spies, and in return, you guys can become the sole suppliers of all our products in the whole of Fire Abyss Kingdom, and additionally you guys can buy our weapons, i.e. the ballista and catapults at production costs." Vlad thought after John's proposal, so that's how it is, he plans to build more industries and needs our help. Well, that is fair enough. Anyway, since I have taken him as a disciple, I should be considerate enough to him right now. Well, this deal sounds good. You can bring in the papers so that we can finalize the deal. John signaled Taylor and he immediately bought some papers that were already prepared so that they can be signed at any moment. After watching the already prepared papers, Vlad understood why John displayed those weapon blueprints in front of everyone yesterday. Quite a cunning boy, so he already predicted that I would agree to the terms. Well, that's good enough to be my disciple. Watching this from the sidelines, Melanie scowled to Vlad and said to John, "Boy, you are quite lucky that he isn't extorting you already. He always waits for people to approach him, that's why he could always extort from people in the past. Don't be so trusting already, even if he is your master now." This way they concluded their talk and went back to their own business. Meanwhile, Melanie stayed at mansion to experience some of the food which was famous among all the people in the town. The servants in the mansion treated Melanie with utmost care as they knew she was John's master. During this time, she also saw the peculiarity in all the furnitures inside the mansion. These furnitures were very different from all the luxurious things she saw in the palace, and they looked quite good. Meanwhile, Rifon finally got a chance to meet John after John concluded his meeting with Jake and others. After some time, John met Rifon in one of the rooms. Chapter 54. Taylor invited Rifon and brought snacks made by the chefs on the table in front of them. After looking at some of the documents on the table, John asked Rifon, "Okay, I understand from your information that you studied at Imperial Capital and have a lot of interest in architecture, so what encouraged you to join us here on the borders of the Northern Domain?" Rifon scratched his head and said to him in a mild tone, "Actually, I was only here for a trip to rediscover myself and nature. However, as I was traveling North Frontier Town, I noticed this particular mansion here and it was work of art from my perspective, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to meet the creator of this piece of art. And recently I have noticed that this town is rebuilding and bringing in a lot of people, so I hope to work here as one of the chief architects here. This here is one of my previous works which is quite famous in the capital, and when I visited this town I felt a resonance and made a portrait of this mansion and people in their surroundings." John asked him after watching his works, "From what I understand, you can easily be employed by various nobles in any of the kingdoms. I wonder why you would want to join us here." Rifon answered without much thought to John, "Well, they aren't interesting enough is what I felt, and hence my decision to join North Frontier Town. I wouldn't have traveled to Wilds here if I was satisfied with my life in the capital. Someday I hope to make one legendary structure which people all around the world would remember for ages to come, and this place seems interesting enough where I can see my works of art and fulfill my dream here. Additionally, don't you need an architect for your town, so how about hiring me?" John pretty much liked his answer, then thought for a while and said to him, "Well, it's quite true that I still require an architect for the planning of this town to transform it into a city. Anyway, since we are in a shortage of personnel, you can work for us now. You will be in charge of the planning of the North Frontier City for now at least. Anyway, join us for our meeting now, since we are going to discuss important things which are related to the construction industry." After some time, all the people gathered at the previously set time. All the officers were present in the hall, and it was Tornwall first who started reporting of the day's events. "There is the report present in everyone's desks. I have already taken in the required personnel from all the slaves, however we would still require more people if we want to support the town at full scale. Of all the dwarves, half are focused on creating the prototype of the ballista, and another half of the dwarves and other slaves are first focused on making the forge which was discussed yesterday. Since this forge is quite different from all the forges I have seen and built, that is why I have focused on using more people to make this forge, as it would be our first forge. As for labor, I had later discussed with Joseph, and he has said that they will provide more slaves from Marquis Ray's Pearl City, and their cost will be deducted from their soap trade. He told us that they will try buying more dwarves from the market and prefer to not buy any criminal slaves, so it would solve our problem for labor in the long term." After hearing Tornwall's report, he added, "Good work. Focus on completing the forge first, as it will help us to develop the town faster. And make sure not to make any mistakes when you are making the forge. Jay, continue." Jay gave his report. "We have started training all the warriors from today in archery, and some have displayed exceptional talents. They are also given the new training techniques which would suit our needs." Later on, they joined Josephine and Alan to train their melee combat. John today announced the important things which he got to know after coming back here yesterday. "Okay, I first wanted to announce to everyone that our paper making factory is completed after a long time, so I wanted you guys to keep a few people at the paper making factory. And I wanted to introduce you guys to a new member. He is from Imperial Capital and a half-elf. He will be one who will plan with me to build North Frontier City in the future. For now we will focus on building a brick and cement factory so it can solve our problem of housing. As you might know, only the transportation of stones cost us a lot, so I have decided to make a brick and cement factory which will help us to accelerate and improve our building of infrastructure. I have already ordered Joseph to bring clay and limestone in huge amounts which will help us in making cement." John then demonstrated the importance of cement in small amounts to everyone. Rifon opened his mouth as soon as he saw the effects of cement. He thought, this thing alone will change the whole landscape on how fortresses, palaces, and other important infrastructures are built in the future. I guess my decision to come and work here was right after all. A lot of people here didn't realize the importance of cement in this meeting, but Rifon surely understood its importance as soon as he saw it, because he knew how much difficulties were faced when making a grand structure. Tornwall was also one of the people who realized the importance of cement after watching its effects and directly raised a proposal. Lord, I would like to order this cement as it would help us in accelerating the building process of our forge. John thought. Good that both of them instantly realized the importance of cement. John has been waiting for this reaction from both Rifon and Tornwall, as he understood the importance of building infrastructures. Rifon looked meaningfully at John and added a proposal. Lord, are there any proposals on how to keep the production of these things a secret, because these things would very much change a lot of things in the whole of the Elias kingdom, including the surrounding countries? John thought, well, those will be handled by both Vlad's men and my men when it comes to keeping secrets from now on. John smiled and said to Rifon and everyone present in the hall, you guys don't have to worry about it. I have already taken that into consideration, and those production secrets will be kept guarded by our men as well as men from Duke Blusia, as I have already reached a deal with them earlier. Most of the people in the room understood that deal would have most likely involved providing them with weapons that he presented in front of everyone yesterday. It seems he intentionally presented those weapons in front of Vlad yesterday so he can exchange some benefits with them until the time he and his domain gets stronger. This was how Tornwall thought after today's announcement. Many other people in the hall also thought that John intentionally presented these weapon designs in front of Vlad and Diana so he could exchange some benefits with him. Chapter 55. Most of the people in the room understood that deal would have most likely involved providing them with weapons that he presented in front of everyone yesterday. It seems he intentionally presented those weapons in front of Vlad yesterday so he can exchange some benefits with them until the time he and his domain gets stronger. This was how Tornwall thought after today's announcement. Many other people in the hall also thought that John intentionally presented these weapon designs in front of Vlad and Diana so he could exchange some benefits with him. John started a long set of orders for everyone which he had already prepared after arriving with the help of Sarah. John started. Meanwhile, Rifon, you will also be involved in making the school and university in this town. I plan to have everyone in our town to be literate when it comes to reading and writing at least. It will be a school which would consist of a normal school, military school, and magic school. So our main objective of this project would be to get as many capable teachers and famous professors as much as we can. The main objective of these respective schools and universities would be: the normal school and university would focus on making everyone literate when it comes to culture, language, basic arithmetic, geography, and history. The military university would focus on training people in combat, engineering, and strategizing for war with various missions and competitions between each other. The magic university would focus on medicine and magic for experimenting with various theories that could be helpful in future ventures. It would be good if magicians and people involved in medicine collaborate with each other. If they are able to make cheap pharmacies affordable to masses or make magic medicine, they can use a part of it to fund their own theories and be eligible to ask for funding from us. Because light magic is always available for aristocrats. The rich people with money never focused on development of medicine, and hence poor always felt the burn of plagues and other diseases that they could never defend against, and hence in my magic university at North Frontier Town I plan to focus on a fusion of herbology, medicine, and magic. It would be helpful for everyone in the town in the long run, whether it is rich, powerful people or common people. For this project Eva, Josephine, and Sally would be in charge of it. As we are in shortage of personnel, Alan would have to train warriors alone for some time now. People were quite surprised after watching the ambitious plans of John. John looked at Eva and said to them, as you guys are more aware of people in Imperial City, that is one of the reasons why I want you guys to administer the schools and university in our town. You guys will be a great and better influence to attract teachers, professors, artists, musicians, and other people to our town, as you already studied at Imperial City and can influence them. And remember, every guy in our town would have to attend our school and universities. Persuade them as much as you can, because it will be beneficial for them in the future. Our paper factory would fund the cost of their books, while I also plan to make a library in the town. I know this would be a big project, but I hope you guys can make. Don't worry about the money which would require for these projects. We will also be encouraging works of arts via our library. Mayor Sam would be in charge of building the administrative headquarters and report directly to me after it is built. In future, we will hold our meeting over there, so this one of the important structures of the city. Gordon, you will leave your position as the deputy manager of the soap factory and will be in charge of maintaining roads connecting this town to others as soon as the cement making starts in our town. You would have to plan for the laborers required for this project, and hence you should make early preparations. Taylor will help you if any problems occur, and he will report to me. This will be one of the things where you can experience handling big projects and learn from it. Taylor will be in charge of our farming administration. As we have seen the results previously, we will implement my new theories on farming in the whole of the North Frontier town. He will also be taking reports in my absence. If any of you guys don't find me, then you can give your reports to Taylor in my absence. And last but not the least, today we have a new member over here. He is Taylor's son Jake. I have decided to take in Jake for my special training with Vlad, so he will mostly not be available for warrior training and will be supervised directly under me. If any of you guys have any doubts, then you ask me right now, and if you guys have proposals, then send it Taylor in writing with a plan or present it in future meetings with prior notice the same day. After John's introduction, many people in the room understood that John planned to groom him into one of his people for the future. During this time, one of the servants in the mansion came to the meeting. He was told if there were any important guests, then he can come into the meeting to report about it if it was a grave matter. The servant reported to Taylor first in his ears. Taylor nodded and let him leave. Then, after getting permission for John, Taylor reported about the matter to John. Lord, one of the servants of Second Prince Lookoff has sent a present, and he sends his regards to you on becoming the honorary Baron of North Frontier Town. And it seems he means no ill from how they have greeted us. How do you think we handle this matter? Chapter 56. John asked the people in the room, I would like to hear the opinions from you guys. As I have very little information on him, I would like to hear suggestions from you guys. On hearing the name of Prince Lookoff, many of them showed annoyed expressions, some showed disdain, some showed curious expressions, while some showed an understanding expression on how they knew something. Eva and Sally were the ones who furrowed their eyebrows first and showed annoyed expressions. It was because both Eva and Sally had seen and heard a lot of rumors about Prince Lookoff. They had even seen his cruelty firsthand at the Imperial City. To many people, Prince Lookoff seemed like someone who was always provoking the commoners as well as the nobles. He didn't spare anyone and mocked them about their hypocrisy. A lot of people tried making moves on him because of his provocative behavior, but many paid painful prices for their actions. Even her own mother feared him because of his insanity. Having experienced and seen a lot of things, it was Tornwall who suggested first to the whole group, I feel we should treat them with reciprocity, as they don't mean any ill will to us for now. Plus, as you might all know his behavior, so we wouldn't want to be on bad terms with him, so it is best we keep a neutral position. I think it's mostly because he noticed us and thought of using us to piss on people he doesn't like so they don't approach us, and he may be intentionally challenging them to the fact he can bow down and greet an upstart while they can sit up on their high horse and act almighty. Meanwhile, it is also to gauge our reactions regarding his goodwill. The most important thing is if we are on bad terms with him, we won't get anything but one more enemy, while imperial nobles would think it was only natural for us to be on bad terms with him. However, if we keep a neutral position on him, it won't affect our positions on both sides. People would only think that we are cautious and smart. Meanwhile, Eva with an angry face thought, God, why do we attract all those crazy guys in this barren border town? I hope we can pass this storm if we face one because of him. And Sally thought, what is doing here? Is he here to create another incident here? Eva this time raised an opinion, I know one thing sure, if we antagonize his men on our first meeting, then I am sure he will hold on this grudge on us for a long time. however that guy is dangerous as an ally. Well, many of his allies have faced the burnt because of his insane actions in the past. However, I still hope we keep some distance with him. Meanwhile, Gordon cautiously them, would it be good? I mean all of you have heard of his rumors, right? Plus we would be facing a beast invasion this year, don't you think some nobles would use this pretext to attack us? John considered all of their opinions and made a decision finally. Okay, we will conclude our meeting for today now, and I have decided that we won't be on bad terms with him for now. We can judge him later on. You guys can get back to your work while I meet him. Jake, you can remain here since your training will start today. Hearing that, everyone set off to prepare and fulfill their duties. For many, this was the first time they were handling these sorts of jobs, and it will be up to John to guide them so that they can help him later on. Meanwhile, in this meeting, John focused on teaching everyone in the town because he hoped that this city transcends from a labor-oriented work to multiple fields, as it will help everyone later on. He also planned to make dramas and musical instruments from Earth as well as Sarah's world, which would enhance the culture of the town. However, on this path he would be facing many unknown hurdles. After everyone settled, John headed to the room where one of Lukhoff's servants was waiting to be greeted by John. He was one of Duncan's men. Duncan had given him a letter which was specially made by Lukhoff so that only Baron himself reads it and gives him an immediate answer. His name was Giorgio. He was quite young to be holding a sufficient position of power and authority under Duncan. He seemed like a 25-year-old guy with a height of 5 feet 8 inches. The most peculiar features about him were his red hair, which stood out among the masses. He also had 2 small red horns on his forehead. He wore clothes that were more suited to a trader or businessman. After John arrived in the room, Giorgio enthusiastically stood up and greeted John. From this reaction it can be seen that they sent their greetings and gifts with good intentions, while the others were thinking of him as an upstart honorary baron who didn't even fight in a war to deserve the same status as them. He wasn't even from any big family to deserve the same status as them. Usually, the new merchants who became nobles by paying always faced this discrimination from the nobles, and this can also be seen from how they were given lands. It was almost always a loss-making project for them, and many of them, because of losing money, gave up on it, and as merchants, they always emphasized on profits, so most of the times it was a rationale for them to give up on it. However, there were some who endeavored for a lot of years and got results of their work. It was only after 1 to 2 generations, when their interests were intermixed with nobles, that they were gradually accepted by them, as they were able to survive in this world of aristocrats. Chapter 57. Greeting to Baron and all of your subjects. Following the orders of my master, I have personally come to deliver you a letter which my master hoped only you read it. He sends his greetings and a gift for you to congratulate on becoming a lord. He hopes that you comment on the gift and answer to his message. He bought a box that had a short sword, not a knife nor a sword, but something in between. However, this was not the main gift that Lukhoff had prepared for John. The actual gift contained in the letter which Lukhoff had prepared. John was quite surprised after looking at that sword, because after analyzing he found out that it was made from a very precious metal in this world. This was made from a magic metal. Magic metal was used in weapons to improve the lethality of magic used by users. It was first discovered about 4,000 years ago by a court magician. After some years it was spread to other countries after they observed its use and importance as a strategic resource. John remarked in quite a fascinating manner, "Prince Lukhoff spent quite a lot to gift me this sword." John said this because he knew that magic metal was not available to commoners or even merchants who had money. It could only be bought by people who had connections or people in power. It was because most of the resources of magic metal were monopolized by big nobles and the royal family with a collaboration of local heads. Many a times when magic metals were found on borders, it immediately set off a war between countries because of its importance as a strategic resource. Many a time, small nobles either got rich if they heeded the line of the regional lords, dukes of the region, or the royal family. Or they would feel the heat and get burned from people in power from all sides for possessing such a hot potato without any power. However, there were still some cases where some nobles who hid their power or made deals with foreign powers made many people helpless and pay a lot from what they got. However, they were only rare cases where many interests were involved. What interested John the most about magic metal was its research value and its applications in other things and not the weapons. In the letter, Prince Lukov gave his normal greetings to John and he hoped to have a discussion in person with him one day if time permitted. At the end of the letter, Lukov wrote only 3 important words. First was the name of a mercenary group, the second was the name of a place and the last one was the name of Prince Hector. From this letter, John concluded that Prince Lukov hopes to forge a relationship with them and these 2 gifts were a show of sincerity from Lukov's part on their first meeting without any hope for anything in return. John pretty much liked this gesture from Lukov's and smiled. Giorgio didn't miss John's smile and pretty much understood that they at least made a good impression on John from their first meeting. He could also see that John didn't make conclusions on his master based on rumors. He had a very neutral view on him just like any person would have when they meet new people. Okay, you can have my answer. Taylor later asked a servant to carefully place the sword in John's room so he can check it out later on. He brought a paper, a feather pen and ink so John can give a reply. John thanked Prince Lukov and stated that he can see his sincerity from both the gifts and he too hoped to meet him if they can get a chance later on. However, he also hoped that Prince comes and meet him at the North Frontier City. John specifically and intentionally said North Frontier City. Both Taylor and Giorgio could understand his intentions from his wordings. On the surface, John seemed neutral, but both sides can see that there wasn't true neutrality but more curiousness could be seen between both the sides. John even offered to provide soaps to Prince Lukov for the western side as a sole provider. One was because John felt that Duke Blackwolf was going to make a move on him, so he hoped to use Prince Lukov as a leash against him. This would benefit both sides. While Giorgio was here for the same purpose because Prince Lukov wanted to use this unique soap trade against Duke Blackwolf's business and use him to get more information on Felix, as lately he was getting very little information on him. However, he knew that chances were less because both sides didn't know about each other. If Duke Blackwolf relented to them, then Prince Lukov could at least strike a deal with him to get more information, and in return, Prince Lukov would sell these soaps outside the border in other countries at the western border without incurring any losses. Giorgio had his own thoughts after it was possible to make a deal with John. It is good that information was used instead of normal presents for making this deal possible. It seems Master Duncan was on the spot when he said instead of giving superficial presents, our information resources could be better as they are unique and they would show more sincerity when dealing with John. Giorgio was taken well care of in the mansion by Taylor. As the head butler of a baron, Taylor made sure to show Giorgio the best things in the mansion, which included food and pool in the backyard with the barbecue stand. This was a new experience for Giorgio. Giorgio thought and said to Taylor after experiencing these things, "The mansion here is quite good and food here has a unique taste as well. I heard a lot of rumors that the food here was great, but I never knew it was something different like this." It seems that those rumors were true. Is it true that Baron personally designed this mansion, its furniture, meanwhile also creating these dishes? I still find it hard to believe that someone could be better at so many things. The most he liked here was the ice cream and the spicy hot pot served at the mansion. Taylor proudly said to Giorgio, "Yes, Lord himself designed this mansion to suit his tastes, and he also created those dishes because he felt there were too few dishes and he liked none of them, so he made these." Taylor had also inquired about this peculiar scene after arriving at the mansion when it came to food and architecture of this mansion. He was quite amazed after learning that John created so many unique things. After confirmation, Giorgio had different thoughts, as expected from her disciple. But Master is quite insane sometimes when it comes to certain situations. I wonder how long this relation would last. Chapter 57. Greeting to Baron and all of your subjects. Following the orders of my master, I have personally come to deliver you a letter which my master hoped only you read it. He sends his greetings and a gift for you to congratulate on becoming a lord. He hopes that you comment on the gift and answer to his message. He bought a box that had a short sword, not a knife nor a sword but something in between. However, this was not the main gift that Lukov had prepared for John. The actual gift contained in the letter which Lukov had prepared. John was quite surprised after looking at that sword because after analyzing he found out that it was made from a very precious metal in this world. This was made from a magic metal. Magic metal was used in weapons to improve the lethality of magic used by users. It was first discovered about 4,000 years ago by a court magician. After some years it was spread to other countries after they observed its use and importance as a strategic resource. John remarked in quite a fascinating manner, "Prince Lukov spent quite a lot to gift me this sword." John said this because he knew that magic metal was not available to commoners or even merchants who had money. It could only be bought by people who had connections or people in power. It was because most of the resources of magic metal were monopolized by big nobles and the royal family with a collaboration of local heads. Many a times when magic metals were found on borders, it immediately set off a war between countries because of its importance as a strategic resource. Many a time, small nobles either got rich if they heeded the line of the regional lords, dukes of the region, or the royal family. Or they would feel the heat and get burned from people in power from all sides for possessing such a hot potato without any power. However, there were still some cases where some nobles who hid their power or made deals with foreign powers made many people helpless and pay a lot from what they got. However, they were only rare cases where many interests were involved. What interested John the most about magic metal was its research value and its applications in other things and not the weapons. In the letter, Prince Lukov gave his normal greetings to John and he hoped to have a discussion in person with him one day if time permitted. At the end of the letter, Lukov wrote only 3 important words. First was the name of a mercenary group, the second was the name of a place and the last one was the name of Prince Hector. From this letter, John concluded that Prince Lukov hopes to forge a relationship with them and these 2 gifts were a show of sincerity from Lukov's part on their first meeting without any hope for anything in return. John pretty much liked this gesture from Lukov's and smiled. Giorgio didn't miss John's smile and pretty much understood that they at least made a good impression on John from their first meeting. He could also see that John didn't make conclusions on his master based on rumors. He had a very neutral view on him just like any person would have when they meet new people. "Okay, you can have my answer." Taylor later asked a servant to carefully place the sword in John's room so he can check it out later on. He brought a paper, a feather pen and ink so John can give a reply. John thanked Prince Lukov and stated that he can see his sincerity from both the gifts and he too hoped to meet him if they can get a chance later on. However, he also hoped that Prince comes and meet him at the North Frontier City. John specifically and intentionally said North Frontier City. Both Taylor and Giorgio could understand his intentions from his wordings. On the surface, John seemed neutral, but both sides can see that there wasn't true neutrality but more curiousness could be seen between both the sides. John even offered to provide soaps to Prince Lukov for the western side as a sole provider. One was because John felt that Duke Blackwolf was going to make a move on him, so he hoped to use Prince Lukov as a leash against him. This would benefit both sides. While Giorgio was here for the same purpose because Prince Lukov wanted to use this unique soap trade against Duke Blackwolf's business and use him to get more information on Felix, as lately he was getting very little information on him. However, he knew that chances were less because both sides didn't know about each other. If Duke Blackwolf relented to them, then Prince Lukov could at least strike a deal with him to get more information, and in return, Prince Lukov would sell these soaps outside the border in other countries at the western border without incurring any losses. Giorgio had his own thoughts after it was possible to make a deal with John. It is good that information was used instead of normal presents for making this deal possible. It seems Master Duncan was on the spot when he said instead of giving superficial presents, our information resources could be better as they are unique and they would show more sincerity when dealing with John. Giorgio was taken well care of in the mansion by Taylor. As the head butler of a baron, Taylor made sure to show Giorgio the best things in the mansion, which included food and pool in the backyard with the barbecue stand. This was a new experience for Giorgio. Giorgio thought and said to Taylor after experiencing these things, "The mansion here is quite good and food here has a unique taste as well. I heard a lot of rumors that the food here was great, but I never knew it was something different like this." It seems that those rumors were true. Is it true that Baron personally designed this mansion, its furniture meanwhile also creating these dishes? I still find it hard to believe that someone could be better at so many things. The most he liked here was the ice cream and the spicy hot pot served at the mansion. Taylor proudly said to Giorgio, "Yes, Lord himself designed this mansion to suit his tastes, and he also created those dishes because he felt there were too few dishes and he liked none of them, so he made these." Taylor had also inquired about this peculiar scene after arriving at the mansion when it came to food and architecture of this mansion. He was quite amazed after learning that John created so many unique things. After confirmation, Giorgio had different thoughts, as expected from her disciple. But Master is quite insane sometimes when it comes to certain situations. I wonder how long this relation would last. Chapter 59. Today Vlad had made the servants in the mansion bring 2 big pots which could even be occupied by 3 big men. Today he prepared a special poison for both of them so that they could gain some resistance to poison, and it would be very helpful in their training. The only thing was every step of Vlad's training was life-threatening. "Both of you need to bath in this tub of poison for 2 whole hours, then you would go in the medicinal bath and then we would start reaction training. The main reason for this training is to dull your senses via using this poison and have you guys work under extreme circumstances which would help you in activating your extraordinary senses." As soon as the topic of poisons came, Melanie said to Vlad, "Poisons? I make better poisons than those lousy poisons you bought." Vlad was going to retort, but he soon saw Melanie's smile and also remembered a previous incident where he was accidentally poisoned by one of her poisons. He ignored her and carefully said these words to them: "These are poisons made especially for your training, so we wouldn't need potent poisons for now. We will slowly increase the potency and intensity as your training progresses." Jake was very determined when he was going to dip in the poison tub. He grit his teeth and took a dip immediately as soon as he remembered the previous events he faced in the past. John wasn't concerned as much as he knew that Melanie wouldn't let them die even if they were in the worst possible situation. During these days John understood that Grandma Melanie had quite a lot of power in the past from the way she talked to Vlad and how Vlad too talked carefully in front of her, and this was one of the reasons he concluded that Grandma Melanie might be someone big in pharmacy. John very patiently took a look at poison. He first dipped his finger in the poison and smelled it. From this he concluded that it was poison was specifically made for dulling the senses of all the body parts, and it may poison you if someone has low poison resistance. However, the effects of this poison would remain for the whole day, and this one of the reasons where their senses would activate if they were in a continuous state of extreme dull senses. John then took the dip in the tub without any hesitation. After 2 hours they came out from the poison bath and took a medicinal bath which was specially prepared by Melanie. Only after the bath did they start their training. This time Vlad bought a pot full of snakes. There were all kinds of snakes who can spit acid, poison, smoke, and other things. You guys would have to dodge all of their attacks in this specific yard. The more you dodge the better it is for you, or else you guys will continue to suffer in the following days. I hope you all the best. And yet I will still be watching you guys when you dodge." Melanie spoke to Vlad in a questioning tone as she was quite concerned about this training. "Won't you train them like all those guys in night schools do? Like weight training, stamina training, all those training exercises like the ones at the palaces? Are you doing this purposely?" She was more concerned about this training because she felt this would affect John when she taught her in the morning. She felt conned by Vlad as soon as she saw this training and hence asked him this question. Vlad knew why she was angry, however he only gave her a mocking smile and said to her as if he didn't what was going on in an arrogant tone. "Humph, why would I follow those lousy schools in all these kingdoms? I have my own way of dealing with things. I feel the best training only comes from extreme situations and practical training. No amount of muscles or magic training would make you a veteran on a battlefield. This is what I learned from all my experiences all these years." "Ha ha ha. Anyway, you can't back off after we agreed on John's training. We never agreed on what type of training I would conduct with these guys, so it's your fault for never asking about it before agreeing." She knew she was conned by Vlad as soon as she heard those words, and she had to accept the result because of their earlier agreement. She thought as she argued with Vlad, maybe I need to poison him again so that he learns his lesson again. However, on the sidelines, John was able to do better than what was expected of even the normal extraordinary people. Vlad had expected this from John because of his earlier encounter, however what he wanted to see was something different. Vlad thought as he saw John coping with the snakes, how long can you endure this high-intensity training with such a focus? However, he is still able to have a high focus even with a poison bath just recently, truly unexpected. Even I wouldn't have performed like this without any drop in my reaction speeds, body speed, or my efficiency after a year of my initial training. I truly hit upon an invaluable gem this time. Melanie meanwhile was very shocked after watching the movements of John. I never thought John was such a capable fighter with such a high reaction speed. No wonder that this con man wanted John as his disciple. I should have bargained for more if I knew more about this. However, inside John's head a lot of notifications were popping out. These were notifications of which were simulating the movements of these animals while the AI was simultaneously simulating John's brain, calculating speed and body reactions to reach the maximum efficiency. He was quite satisfied and was showing a joyous smile. Successful stimulation of body has improved the bodily reactions of the host. Host will now have better reactions under extreme situations which include poisons, paralyzes, smoke and other external factors. I hope host increases his normal intensity of training for better results in the future. However, host is advised to be prepared for better results of the training. Chapter 60. While John was smiling, both Vlad and Melanie doubted whether he was masochist after experiencing such torture from this training. Melanie thought, is he also getting a hang and love for this type of masochist training? I hope he doesn't turn out like the rest of the muscleheads. Melanie understandingly looked at Vlad and asked with her eyes. It was as if both of them knew what were they thinking. To this Vlad harumphed and denied vehemently and tried to explain himself. Don't look at me like that, my only pleasure comes from conning people and my tendencies which include cities. Oops, I said something unnecessary, anyway never mind. I am not a masochist. Period. Melanie saw this reaction from him and concluded, it seems you were correct regarding this, maybe he likes this training because he is observing and experiencing some effects of this training. Jake on the side was not faring well, but he was struggling his very best and took this training very seriously. The book which John gave him earlier had quite a good effect on him which helped him train for more time. Vlad saw Jake fall down and said, this was unexpected from this kid. I never thought he would even last 10 minutes of this training, never mind a full hour. Vlad then brought him back and laid him down in the hot spring full of medicinal herbs. Melanie had already prepared this bath for both of them in case of an emergency with the use of poisons. Melanie said in a serious tone after watching Jake fall down, that's true, I didn't think this kid would have lasted more than 10 minutes while 20 minutes were his max limit was what I felt. Quite a tenacious kid and some good fortune to meet John. However, John also has quite a good fortune meet this boy who has already considered him as his lord. Anyway, put him carefully in the bath, he still has to train tomorrow. Meanwhile, John completed his routine of 2.5 hours. Vlad was quite surprised that John was able to finish his first routine, and the same was the case for Melanie after she watched John's training menu. It seems I would have to make a special training menu for both these kids. No major mistakes, only a lack of experience. I wonder what kind of monster he will become after he completes his training. I wonder whether it will be good or bad for the world. However, heroes have always walked on the path of numerous graves, and as dice had already been cast a long time ago, what we have to do is watch, observe and pave the path. Vlad sighed a bit and said after John completed his training and said in a low tone, I wished he became a full-time assassin, he would have moved the underworld and gained unmatched power. Melanie heard him, then she smiled and said to him, this kid is different from all the ones you met previously, he has an unmatched thirst and appetite for knowledge, whether it is theoretical or practical, and it won't matter which subject it is related to. That is what I concluded from his behavior today. However, I wonder whether his thirst for knowledge is a good or a bad thing. Vlad said to Melanie in a nostalgic way, well, isn't that our responsibility? And haven't we done enough in our past to be well known? whether for good or for bad. Melanie remembered and said, "Yeah, that's true, Heath was always like that as well." She then continued and conversed about an important matter. "Recently, I heard that Mad Kid sent one of his men to John and John served him quite well. I wonder how I should handle this situation." "Never mind, from the rumors I heard you knew that kid for some time, didn't you?" "Well, it is John's personal matter, I won't interfere in his personal matters and it is his choice and decision. Whatever the choices he makes, as long as he sticks to his values and his bottom lines, I am fine with it. That is why I wonder whether his thirst for knowledge is good or bad. However, from what I have observed, I know he is a good kid." Vlad said in a serious tone, "The same was true for that Mad Kid from the time I knew him. However, he made his own choices. From what I know, he is an emotional guy when it comes to experiences and also insane when he decides to act, so he is that sort of guy. So I find him quite amusing when he acts." Vlad ended with an amusing smile when talked about the madman. Melanie sighed and replied to John and didn't mention the other guy anymore. "Okay, John, you can go to the bath prepared and remember to follow all the procedures for before and after the bath." When John entered the bath, he was quite surprised because he saw this medicinal bath for the first time in his life. There were a lot of unknown herbs used he didn't know about. Watching this, Melanie was quite amused and said to John, "You don't have to worry, it won't kill you. This was specially prepared by me for increasing the performance for both of you in your training period." Melanie said proudly as she displayed her collections from all those years, "I coughed up quite a lot this time around." To this John replied to Melanie, "No, I was just wondering about the herbs used in this medicinal bath, as I wasn't able to recognize a lot of herbs from the smell of this medicinal bath." Hearing this, both Vlad and Melanie were surprised as didn't expect John's senses of smell to be strong enough to recognize even the herbs he worked on and touched. However, she still smiled and answered him, "Well, they are some herbs which are used in advanced podiwondering and some of them were from my personal collection when I traveled the world in the past. Since you are my only disciple, I have to obviously display my best and not to lose face." John got quite used to this scene after some while now. However, from her words he still understood that Melanie was going to use a lot from her own personal collection when he heard her.